Hello everyone, this is Stephanie. Welcome to another video. So today we're going to work on this bracelet and you'll be able to make the earrings out of the bracelet as well. So I'm using the Preciosa Crystal and Pearl boxes that beadingschool.com curates on their website. And this is the forest box. And if you didn't see my unboxing of 4 of the boxes, so here's the romantic box, the fire box, and the ocean box. So I unboxed all of these, long video, but so much fun. It's like crystal overload. So what you get in these boxes is all Preciosa crystals and pearls. That's it. 300 of them. So here, this is what I've used. Some of just the crystals and pearls from the forest box. And here I started this with the fire box. I don't know if I'm going to make a tutorial out of this because it's not as rigid as I would like it to be. So I'm going to work on it. And I kind of love this part right here. So I'll see what I can do. And if I can get a really nice tutorial out of it, I will. Think of that on like a burgundy or red velvet dress or jacket for the holidays. Wow. All right, but this is the one we're going to work on today. So here is our bracelet, and this is just so much fun, so pretty. It was a blast to make. Really had a lot of fun with it. I'm going to link the boxes in the description box below the video. Of course, you don't have to have the boxes to make this. This is just something I love to share with you, things that I find that I love. I purchased these boxes, 2 of these boxes, and then they sent me a couple after. And I was so happy with my purchase that I was thrilled. So I like to share things with you when I can. All right, so I'm going to clear this off. We'll get a materials list going, and we'll get started. 8mm Chaton, 4mm Bicone. You need a SuoerDuos. I have a 3mm pearl and a 4mm pearl. I've got the 8mm pearl, so I only had 2 left. These are all from that forest box. I think there were 10 of them. I've got 2 size 11.0 seed beads, Miyukis, and one is that really cool Aztec gold coating. I love these. And one is a bronze. I've got a 3mm bugle bead. I've got here this cool clasp, and I'll show it to you on the bracelet. This is what it looks like. It's, sort of a hook and eye, but I just think it's so pretty. And I was looking at this thinking, wouldn't that just be a pretty earring just like that? Always thinking. Okay, then I've got some post earrings for the earrings, so post backs for the earrings. I've got a Toho 11.0. I've got a Miyuki 15.0. So it's important to have this Toho 11.0, I think. So if you have a Toho 11.0 in your stash, that would be nice to use that. I mean, I suppose you could substitute something else for that. Okay, I've got a 6-pound fire line. I'm using crystal. I've got a size 11 beading needle and have a 12 handy and a little stop bead right there. So I'm going to list everything in the description box below the video: sizes, shapes, colors, everything, places to purchase if you need to, and anything I might have forgotten or any notes anything I want to tell you about. All right, so let's clear this off and get started. So thread your needle with about 3 feet of thread, but I want to stop bead about in the middle because we'll use both threads. So I picked up and dropped down to my stop bead, a SuoerDuos and an 11.0, and I did that 4 times. That's what I have. Drop these down to my stop bead. Now I'm just going to sew them into a circle by sewing through the first bead after my stop bead, and then I'm just going to sew all the way around, just to reinforce. So you're just going to sew all through the beads again and exit a SuoerDuos. So I've sewn all the way around, and I'm exiting the bottom hole of the SuoerDuos. I kind of went around twice just to, secure it. So I'm just going to sew through the top hole of that SuoerDuos that I'm exiting. So just like that. Next up, I picked up a SuoerDuos, my 11.0 Toho, and a SuoerDuos. And I'm going to sew through the top hole of the next SuoerDuos. Just like that. Just going to repeat that all the way around. Putting on my last SuoerDuos, Toho 11.0 SuoerDuos, exiting here. Just going to sew through this one and the top hole of that original one, and then the bottom hole of the next SuoerDuos. And then I'm going to reinforce this all the way around. Reinforced all the way around, I'm exiting the bottom hole of a SuoerDuos. I'm just going to sew through the top hole. Just like that. SuoerDuos with your outside thread. Now I want you to take your stop bead off your tail thread. You'll probably exiting a SuoerDuos. It doesn't matter whatever you're exiting interior there. I just wanted to move my thread to an outside Toho 11-0. So I'm exiting the SuoerDuos here. So I'm just going to sew through the bottom hole. I'm going to sew through the top hole of that one, the bottom hole of the outside one, and then through this one. And now I just want to put my thread there so I can use it in a little bit. So we're going to go back to our other thread now, the working thread that's on the outside. With my outside thread again. So I'm exiting SuoerDuos. I'm going to pick up my 4mm bicone and I'm going to sew through the top hole of the next SuoerDuos. So every time I'm sewing through the SuoerDuos that do not have that little Toho 11-0 in between, I'm going to put a bicone there. So like that. And then when I'm sewing through sewing from here to here and it has the Toho 11-0, I'm going to put a 4mm purl. And I'm just going to repeat that all the way around. Like so. And then a purl. So you're just going to do that all the way around. Coming down to my last bead, it's going to be my purl. Sitting here, I'm going to sew through the top hole of this SuoerDuos on through that bicone. And I'm just going to move my thread a little bit. So you might have to angle your needle a little bit to get through, but it'll go through. So I'm just going to leave that thread now, and I'm going to pick up my other thread. Now we're going to work on the little sort of cup for the bezel. So remember, our interior thread is exiting this little Toho 11-0. So I'm going to pick up 5 of my Miyuki 11-0s, and I'm using the bronze here. I think it's light bronze. And what I did here is I picked out the most uniform beads. Now even, Miyuki, who has like the most beautiful uniform beads, even every once in a while you get one that's sort of bigger or square or oddly shaped. I'm picking out the most beautiful ones because that bezel, these beads are going to be, they're going to be the predominant look of this bezel. So you want to make sure they're all beautifully even in size. So, I would take the time to do that every time you pick them up. Sometimes you'll see me like toss a bead aside when I'm picking it up. It's because that's the reason, because I want a nice uniform bead. All right, so I have our 5 Miyuki 11-0s. We're exiting right here. We're going to sew through the next one. Now you might have to bend it over a little bit to get there, but you'll get in there. So just kind of work your way in and get it through that next Toho 11-0. Just like that. Then you're going to do that again. You're going to pick up 5 of your 11-0s and you're going to look for the nicest ones. And the majority of them are beautiful, but so they're nice and uniform. I'm going to sew through the next one. So just like that. Like I said, you can bend it over a little bit. You can do that 2 more times. Here are my last 5 11-0s. I'm sewing through that Toho 11-0 right there. Then I'm going to move right on through that first 5 that I put on. Just like that. Okay, so we have all our outside 11-0s on, and I'm exiting. I came through this group of 5 11-0s. I'm going to pick up one of the Toho 11-0s now, and I'm going to sew through. So exiting that group of 5, I'm going to sew through the next group of 5, and I'm doing the same thing with the Tohos. I'm just picking out the nicest ones. So I'm going to pop that in like that. I'm going to do that in between each group of 5. Down to my last Toho. I'm going to sew through that next group of 5 like that, and then I'm going to continue on through that first Toho 11-0 I put on and through the next 3 Miyuki 11-0. So I want to exit number 3 bead after the Toho. So far, so I'm exiting that number 3 bead of the 5 11-0s. I'm going to pick up 4 15-0s and I'm going to sew through the 3rd bead of that next group of 5. So just like that. Okay, before I put my last group of 4 in, I'm just going to loosen this up a little bit. And I'm going to pop my stone in. So just like that, and you want to make sure that all your 15-0s are like in front of your bezel, in front of your stone, like that. That's what I have. So here are my last 4 15-0s. I'm going to sew through that middle bead of that next group of 5. So that's the first group we were coming out of. And then I'm going to give everything a pull, and I'm going to make sure it's nice and snug. And I'm going to reinforce all the way around. So I'm just going to go through all the beads again. So the 4 15-0s, like there. And then the 11-0. Now, if your bezel is, let's say you're using, your stone's a little bit bigger than mine, or smaller, just adjust how you go through the last round. So you can skip the 11-0 and just go through the 15-0s, and that will pull it in a little tighter. So get that done, and then we'll continue. All the way around, and I'm exiting, I went through all the 15-0s and 11-0s. I'm exiting the 11-0. Just, on one of the corner beads there. I'm going to sew through, just coming down to the next 2 11-0s, like on the side. See that right there? So like that. Next up, I'm going to pick up a Toho 11-0, the Miyuki 15-0, and a Toho 11-0. I'm exiting these 2 on the side. I'm just going to skip this guy, and I'm going to sew through the 2 on the other side of that Toho, and I'm going to pull them down. I'm going to give them a little push down, and that's how you're going to decorate the corner. And then you're going to work your way through that to the next 2 down here, like that. And you're going to do the same thing. My Toho 11-0, my Miyuki 15-0, and my Toho 11-0. Exiting these 2, I'm going to sew through these 2 on the other side of that Toho right there. And I'm making sure that I'm pulling it pretty tight, and I'm making sure that it's sitting nicely. And I'm just going to work my way around to the next group. I'll let you do that. So you'll come out of these 2, you'll put your Tohos and your 15-0s here, and then come back and we'll continue. Coming down to my last Toho 11-0, Miyuki 15-0, Toho 11-0. I'm exiting here. I'm going to sew through these 2 on the other side. So I'm just going to sew through a few beads, and I'm just going to sew this thread in. This is what we have. Let's sew a couple of units together. So let's say you have 2 units. So I've of course gone ahead a little bit, but let's say you have 2 units. And you're going to do this pearl unit in between. So you're going to be using your outside thread. If you have any left over, if not, just add a thread. But you want to be exiting one of the pearls. So exiting right here. I'm going to pick up 3 11-0s, the 4mm pearl and 3 11-0s, and I'm going to sew through the pearl on the other unit. Then I'm going to pick up 3 11-0s, the pearl, and 3 11-0s, and I'm going to sew back through the pearl I was exiting. I've sewn all the way around, and this is what it looks like when I tighten it. So then I reinforced, and I'm exiting the pearl again. So I'm going to pick up a bugle bead. I'm exiting this pearl. I'm going to sew through the next one. I'm going to make sure that bugle bead sits in front like that. I'm going to repeat that all the way around. Bugle bead through the next pearl, just encouraging it to stay in the front. So you can do that 2 more times. My last bugle bead coming through the pearl, making sure it kind of pops in front. So this is what it looks like so far. I'm just going to advance through the next bugle bead and this pearl right here. So just like that. Sitting that 4mm pearl, I picked up that gorgeous 8mm pearlescent green pearl. So beautiful. And I'm going to sew through the 4mm pearl on the other side in the same direction, like that. Don't worry about the thread showing. We're going to cover all the thread that's showing. And then I'm going to sew back up through the pearl, and then back through this 4mm. So you see you have those threads coming around the 4mm. Don't worry about it, that's fine. Okay, so this is how you want to put on your pearl. Okay, so we're exiting this pearl. I'm just going to sew right through that next bugle bead, just like that. So we're exiting the bugle bead. 3 11/0s, and this is where I'm using that gorgeous matte, that check coating Miyuki 11/0. Exiting the bugle bead, I'm just going to skip over the pearl and sew through the next bugle bead, like that. I'm going to pick up, and I have to leave the screen for a second to get to it because my thread is getting short. All right, I'm going to pick up 3 more 11/0s, exiting the bugle bead. I'm going to skip over the pearl and sew through the bugle bead. You got it. Do it again. Do it twice more. And don't worry about it if it looks like that, you know, you can fit another bead in there. It's all going to fit beautifully. So put 3 more here, and then 3 more here, and then we'll continue. Okay, I'm going to sew through I'm going to put my last 3 11/0s on, so exiting the bugle. I'm going to come through the bugle like that. So that's going to place those 11/0s on it. And like I said, don't worry about it if they look wonky. I'm going to sew through the next 3 11/0s like that. So you'll be exiting the 11/0s. This is how it looks. Step, I'm going to pick up 3 15/0s. Is that what I did? Yes. And I'm going to sew through the next 3 11/0s. Like that. I'm just going to do that all the way around. 3 15/0s in between each group of 3 11/0s. 3 15/0s. Exiting the 11/0s, I'm going to sew through these 3 11/0s. And now I have this on. So my thread is short, so really be careful because I used the thread that I had left over from my unit, and it just wasn't quite long enough. So what I did at this point, and I don't know if you really need to do this, I went through, so I'm exiting the 3 11/0s. I went through the first 15/0, I skipped the next one, and then I went through the next 15/0 and the first 11/0. And then I made that sort of pop up a teeny bit. And then I'm exiting this 11/0. I skipped the middle 11/0. I went through this 11/0 and the next 15/0. And I kind of pop that one up a little bit. It pops up just ever so slightly. I'm not even sure if you can tell, but I did it on the other, so I'm going to do it on this one. So what you're going to do here is you're going to skip that 15/0, sew through the next 15/0 and the 11/0. And that's going to pop up a teeny bit. And you're exiting the 11/0, skip the 11/0, sew through the next 11/0 and the 15/0. So in other words, you're just making that center bead pop up. And I just got my thread caught, so let me see if I can just let me use this. Here we go. Okay, so you see what, you know what I mean? So that makes that center bead pop up in each group of 11/0s and 15/0s. Like I said, I'm not sure. Makes a difference. Maybe it just tightens it a little bit. So that's what it's going to look like. So you do that all the way around. I've done that all the way around, and I have no thread left, but I'm just going to talk you through the next group. So I've just ended up exiting one of the group of 3 11/0s. I'm going to turn it to the side, and I'm going to sew through. Let's see if I can get through with this teeny bit of thread through the pearl. So you just want to be exiting. I'll take this out and tie my thread off and add a new thread, but here, so you'll be exiting the pearl just like that. And all you're going to do is you're going to add a bugle bead. See what I did here in between each pearl. So bugle bead through the pearl, bugle bead through the pearl, and so on. And then you're just going to sew that thread in. That's what it's going to look like. Okay, so this is what we have so far. Just a note, when you add your bugle beads on the back here, make sure that you're exiting the pearls and you're putting the bugle beads on, right? So you just want to make sure that that bugle bead is in front. You want to pull your thread this way in the pearl so they're nestled right in there really nicely. A couple of them I didn't do that, but it really makes a difference if you kind of just make sure the bugle bead is pushed down a little bit. Okay, so I went ahead a little bit and put some units together, and I want to show you, I want to discuss with you just different endings here. So I have an ending here with the pearl unit, and I'm going to show you how to put the pearl unit at the end. You might just end with the Chaton units, or you might end with one Chaton unit and one pearl unit. Whatever fits your wrist the best. I think either way they're going to look good. So if you're going to end this way, this is really simple. You've already done you know, these units and attached with the pearl. So you can just stop at that point, and, you know, put it around your wrist and see what that fit is. And I'm going to show you how to add this little pearl unit on the end. So you can add that to either end if you like, or you can just add it to one end if you want. And it still all looks nice when you clasp it. And depending on your clasp and maybe a little extension on your clasp, you have a lot to play with. So let's take a look at how to do this ending pearl. Just add the pearl unit on. So before, you know, we're attaching to either of the Chaton units. So now we're just going to put one at the end. For those of you who need that extra length or want this at the end, you know, you can just leave it like this. The clasp is going to pretty much go on the same. So, all right, so we're going to use this little unit here. So here's my thread. You either put on a thread or you have some thread left over. So I've come through the side purl. I'm going to add 3 11/0 of 4 millimeter purl, and I'm going to repeat that again, and then 3 11/0. So you have 4 groups of 3 11/0 and 3 pearls in between. We're just going to sew through, back through that bead we're exiting. And this is what you have so far. So I'm going to reinforce that all the way around. So I've reinforced all the way around. I'm exiting a pearl. I'm going to pick up the bugle bead and I'm going to sew through the next pearl. Like that. You want to make sure that bugle bead is going to be in front of the pearl. I'm just going to do that all the way around. So bugle bead through the next pearl, just pushing it over a little bit. Just want to sort of lay it on top there. I mean, it doesn't have to be super tight at this point, but just like that. So I do that a couple more times. Okay, last bugle bead. So just like that. That's what it looks like. Now I'm going to advance through so I've come through the pearl, I'm going to advance through the bugle and this pearl right here. This is what we have. I'm going to pick up the 8 millimeter pearl. I'm exiting this side of this 4 millimeter pearl. I'm just going to sew through the other side, the 4 millimeter pearl on the other side in the same direction. Remember, we're kind of putting this on. So we have a thread here and here. Then I'm exiting that 4. I'm going to sew back up through the 8. And I'm going to sew through the other side of this 4 millimeter. And again, this is what it looks like. So just like we did before, only we're not attaching it to another unit here. We're just making it an end piece. Okay, so I'm exiting the pearl. I'm going to sew through the bugle bead. Just like that. Continue like we did when we were, you know, connecting, using the pearl units as connections. I'm going to pick up 3 of my 11/0s. These are I think they're Aztec gold actually, the coating ones. I'm going to sew through the next bugle bead. Just going to do that all the way around. So 3 11/0s through the next bugle bead, like so. Do that a couple more times. 3 11/0s through the next bugle bead, like so. And then you want to sew through the first 3 11/0s right there. So just the same thing we did before. Then I'm going to pick up 3 15/0s. I have to locate 3 15/0s because all my beads got messed up. So let me go grab some 15/0s. 15/0s. So here, 3 15/0s, exiting the 3 11/0s. So through the next 3 11/0s. Remember, we're going to do that all the way around. So 3 15/0s in between each of the 3 11/0s. Okay, last 3 15/0s like that. And then remember, we're going to go around, and you can, you know, skip the middle bead on each one and sew through and skip the middle bead and such like we did before. And then all you're going to do, so I'm not going to do that now, but this is how it looks actually without skipping. So you can do that too. So I'm exiting the 11/0, that group of 3 11/0s, so I'm just going to sew through the pearl, and then I want to pop my bugle bead in the back here, and because we didn't do it on the other one, I'll do it on this. So here what I've done here is just pulled my thread to the back a little bit, picking up a bugle bead. I'm going to sew through the next pearl, and do you see how it wants to go into the front? I'm just pushing it down with my thumb and giving it a pull, and you see how it kind of seats in there? So that, you want to do that. And just keep checking your front and make sure it's looking good. So there you go. That's how you're just going to add the purl unit on the end if you'd just like to end with the purl unit. Okay, so get that done, get your length in, come back, and we'll put on the clasp. Attach in the same place, whether you're using the Chaton unit or the purl unit. We're coming out of this purl on the side, so I've put a thread on, I've sewn through the purl, I've added an 11/0 3mm purl, my one end of my clasp, 3mm purl, and an 11/0. And I'm going to sew through the other side of that purl, like so. And then I'm going to sew through the purl, through the 11/0, through this purl. I don't want to go through the clasp yet again. So 11/0 purl. Then I'm going to pick up another 11/0. I'm going to sew through the loop on the clasp. Then I'm going to pick up another 11/0, and I'm going to sew through the 3mm purl and the 11/0, like so. And then I'm going to sew through the purl on this end, like that. And this is what it looks like. So you want to pull that nice and tight, and then you want to reinforce this a couple of times. So just go through all the beads again till everything is nice and snug, and then do exactly the same thing on the other side. So here I did it on this side as well, and then come back and we'll finish up. Okay, we're back and we're done, and I love how it came out. I think it's so pretty. This one's a little big on me because I wanted to show you this ending, so I didn't really need this ending. But just check your sizing. Just make sure you put it around your wrist, make sure the fit is good, and take into consideration the size of your clasp. But I think it's so pretty. It looks very kind of Tudor to me, and I love anything that's from that era. All right, so I want to thank you so much for being here. I hope if you got your boxes, your Preciosa Crystal and Pearl boxes, that you are having a blast with them. If you didn't, these are beads that are pretty standard in anybody's bead stash, especially if you watch my channel. I use these all the time. So I want to thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you next time. Bye.